Well, if you watched the women's NCAA college basketball championship last weekend, you were not alone. In fact, 18.7 million people tuned in for that game. That's more than the men's final. Heck, that's more than the number of people who watched the NBA final last year. It was exciting basketball with great coaches and players, but much of the buzz has been credited to star player Caitlin Clark.
I don't want my legacy to be, Caitlin won X amount of games or Caitlin scored X amount of points. I hope it's what I was able to do for the game of women's basketball.
It's not just basketball that's capturing eyeballs and the corresponding advertising dollars. We've seen fast growth in the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. We've seen excitement around the Canadian women's soccer team. And we've seen women stepping into broadcasting and coaching roles that were historically most often done by men. It is a good time for women's sports. So today we'll hear from women in the know about how they are seeing their sports change. And we want to hear from you. Have you been following women's sports more closely? What do you attribute to the rising popularity of women's sports? And what will it take until there is parity in pay and broadcasting access for women's and men's sports? You can join the conversation by calling 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Well, I'd like to welcome our guests for the show today. Lisa Tomaitis is head coach of the U of S Huskies. She's also served as coach of the Canadian women's basketball team and Germany's national team. Welcome to the program, Lisa.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And then we've got Astrid Becker, head coach of the U of R's women's soccer. She's also heavily involved in supporting youth sport development in the province. If you have young ones in soccer, you likely know her as Coach Astrid. She's in our Regina studio today. Astrid, hello. Welcome to Blue Sky.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
It's so great to have this conversation today. But before we get into things, I just want to share a Facebook post that was floating around last week. It was by Whitney Fleming, who's a mom who writes about parenting tweens and teens. And so I'll share that with everyone. She writes, "Last night, my daughter and I rushed to get all our work done, ordered Chipotle, and then sat down on our couch to watch March Madness. Two giants were playing, and it was a battle to be seen. On the court were players in pigtails, braids, and full-on makeup. They were strong, fierce, and determined, and they were all female. The coaches, the referees, and the support staff, nearly everyone a woman. The commentators and announcers were mostly women. The ads featured women in sports. I never watched anything like this growing up. I watched the Mets with my dad, the Knicks, or football on Sunday, and the only time women athletes were on TV was during the Olympics or maybe tennis. The tide has been changing. Women's soccer has demanded equal pay and equal representation. Serena Williams and Simone Biles broke endorsement records. There are more females than ever before working in the NFL. But last night was something special. These players lit the TV on fire in the most beautiful way, all because so many women blazed the trail before them. It took a long time to get here. Too long, in fact. But last night, young boys were looking to get Caitlin Clark's autograph. Legends in the NBA said that women were changing the game for the better with new styles of play. Young girls saw that they can be themselves on the court and off, and it's hard to believe we're just getting started. Sports has always had a direct effect on society on multiple levels, from supporting vulnerable and marginal groups and rallying a nation in transition to building confidence and creating opportunities for youth. We are living change right now, and dang girls, you are killing it. Even if you are not a sports fan, there is something electric about what's happening right now. Use it as a spark to engage with your daughters and with your sons. You won't believe your eyes until you see it for yourself. There's so much to root for, and I'm here for it." Lisa, when you listen to that, what's going through your mind?
I guess first off, great post.
There's a reason it went viral.
That's pretty incredible. I mean, that really sums it up in a nutshell. Yeah, it's a fantastic time. I will kind of echo some of her sentiments in that it has been a slow burn, let me tell you,
Yeah.
to get to this point. Having been in this world for, over 25 years, we've been waiting for this time to happen. And there's always been, the storylines, the skill level, the talent, the personalities And we've just been waiting for this moment for sort of mainstream media to be able to pick up on this and to gain the support. We know that there's an appetite for it. It's just a matter of you have to be out there and you have to be seen. And then once the product is seen, people are going to get behind it. And so it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. What do you think is really at the heart of this? Like, what do you think is driving the interest?
I think there's just been a number of things that have kind of come to a head all at the same time. Like you mentioned, the PWHL, the USA women's soccer, just again, you kind of listen to like any media exposure is good exposure just to get people talking about issues and talking about women's sport. And so, I was thinking back to 2012 when our Canadian national team qualified for the Olympics for the first time in 12 years. And that was the moment that we realized that was the first time that the Canadian population was going to be able to see our women's national team play on national TV. And prior to that, no one knew who was on our Canadian national team because we were never on TV. We never had competitions in Canada for people to be able to watch us. And so after 2012, there kind of was, much more of a groundswell. And then after that, it was hosting Pan Am Games in 2015 and Olympic qualifier, and then getting to Tokyo in 2016. So it's just been, again, a number of things that I think have culminated and got us to this point. American mainstream media, I mean, to be able to turn on the TV every weekend this past season and to see a women's basketball game being covered and not have to, get an obscure VPN and try to find some channel in the States that no one gets up here to be able to watch women's basketball. We're finally at that point where it's readily accessible.
Yeah. Astrid, what about you? I know soccer is your first love, but you're very much a sports fan in general. So how would you describe this moment in time for women's sport in general?
If we specifically look at basketball, I'm not a basketball coach. I played a little bit in high school, and I want to say that basketball has done an absolutely amazing job of just igniting the passion of sport in every spectator that was watching. I was tuning in. I was watching games. I was learning players' names. And sitting beside me was my 3-year-old son, enjoying the game, watching basketball. And I think that one of the great things we do as women is we support each other as women. And I don't think anyone's looking and saying it's just basketball. We're looking and saying, look at this platform that's raised women to a whole new level in our country, in North America, getting to hear, about national teams getting on TV for the first time. It's amazing where we are in sport right now. Hearing that Facebook post, I couldn't help but sit here and get emotional. Those are true words spoken by somebody, who's having a first impact with what women's sport is doing. It's a beautiful, and it's an inspirational time to be involved in women's sport. And that's not just soccer. It's not just basketball. The amount of female athletes I see on my news feed, if I'm turning on the TV, if I'm talking and flipping through Instagram, it's such a beautiful time to be involved in the game. And having have coached over 30 years in the game, there's times that you don't think that women's sport will get where it's gotten to right now. So there's a source of pride that the right people have been involved as trailblazers, as pioneers, and especially in our province, creating opportunities for women.
What I'm hearing from both of you is just the importance of visibility and seeing these players on TV. And so, Lisa, I'm curious what the situation is right now, because we know college basketball in the States can be seen on TV. What's the situation for university sports in Canada?
We've got a lot of work to do. And I think university sports in general, not just on the women's side, but on both sides, we need to be more visible. The great thing is that games are webcast, but again, until it, so our fans can follow and people who know how to get, access can watch games. We're very lucky. I was just looking at the picture in the background in my office. I mean, I don't know if you can see that, but that is a packed gym. Playing in a Canada West Championship a few years ago. So there is a market, there's an appetite for it. People get behind it when they get a chance to see it. And so it's going to take a bit of a leap of faith, I think, for us to be able to get into mainstream TV on a regular basis. But if we can get to that point, it's going to, again, help explode our sport and, again, expose female athletes to the type of platform and exposure that they deserve.
And Astrid, what about from your perspective, just how much is available on television? You are head coach of the U of R women's soccer, and so that visibility, I mean, how are we doing in Canada when it comes to seeing these players on TV?
You know, I'm going to echo exactly along the same lines. There can be more and there can be improvements made. There's small steps to make sure our games are live streamed at a good quality, that our fans can purchase CanWest Live packages to be able to watch them, national competitions on YouTube that are accessible for everyone to be able to watch. Those are great steps forward. NWSL, our American Pro League, seeing them when you tune into TSN on the weekends, it's a source of pride. We're starting to see those games come onto our mainstream media, and it's accessible that, cable packages, you can turn it on and be able to watch. But definitely I'm interested to see what Project 8 with their professional soccer league that they're bringing to Canada in 2025, what the broadcasting packages that follow will look like. I hope that it's accessible. My hope that if it's not something that's on cable, that it's a good low cost option that people can purchase and families and young soccer players across Canada can watch.
I think one of the main reasons people still get a cable package is because of sports, right? That's one of the few things that people still watch live, and that coming together to watch an event as it's happening. But I am curious if social media has had an influence on things, because even if you're not tuning in the moment for the game, I mean, I know on my feed, I was just seeing so much chatter about this. And so, Lisa, I'm just wondering if social media has provided a bit more visibility, or the role that you're seeing in it elevating women in sport.
Yeah, it's played a massive role. It has changed the landscape for sure. And so, yes, I mean, these athletes and their personalities, they are out there. They have massive platforms and massive followings. And so you get to see the personality behind, or that maybe you don't get to see as readily when you see them compete. And so, it's creating a lot of following, a lot of excitement. Sometimes some controversy, but it's always good, and so it's been a game changer.
Yeah, Astrid, what are your thoughts on that?
We're really fortunate at the U of R is that our social media team allows our players to take over and provide input to what they're posting. So I find it really interesting of what they find important to share with the viewers. It's a great recruitment tool, and I know showing clips and highlights of their games is something that's very important and meaningful for them to share. Our Twitter is always, X now I guess is called, is always alive on game days, and people are always commenting and interacting, and they love see those live clips and posts. So again, it's just an accessibility. We see more people connecting with us, and you have the different age generations that can connect with the programs and the athletes. Facebook is the mums and dads and grandmas and grandpas. The Instagram is more of the players' age and recruits, and any other. We're not quite on TikTok yet, but there's lots of different venues for the athletes to connect with people.
Do you have to deal with the challenges, though, that come with social media? I know what women politicians have to deal with on social media. And, we're having this really celebratory conversation right now, the progress that's been made. But then I know that when we put ourselves out there, some stuff can come back to us that we think, are we really still having these conversations? So do you have to kind of deal with that stuff too, Astrid?
I think I see them, if I'm really honest, I think I see them more from the coaching lens than the players' lens. Our players, to my knowledge, and I do monitor social media, I don't think they see it as much, but sometimes criticisms and sometimes pieces around the coaching and a female coach. I definitely have thick skin when it comes on to logging and seeing comments maybe around game results or something that we're doing within the program. The players don't seem to get it as much, though. We have seen with the national team that come out a bit more with some really unfair things, and some players targeted, around who they're dating. But fortunately, that's not an issue I've had to deal with in my office at this time.
I want to ask you both just a little bit more about celebrity culture that's attached to sports. In particular, Caitlin Clark, right, who we heard off the top of the show. The opposing coach called her the GOAT, greatest of all time, and praised her role in elevating women's basketball. And you know, whether or not Caitlin Clark has reached that status, but it does make me think of the Williams sisters and just sort of that road that athletes might find themselves on where people are peeking into their lives a bit through social media and how that creates maybe a bit of popularity around the sport because of the individuals and the connection that the public feels with them. But Lisa, I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about Caitlin Clark and the impact that she's had.
Yeah, I mean, just a phenomenal player that brings a very unique skill set. I mean, her shooting ability, she's kind of like, Steph Curry on the women's side. And so a lot of people wanted to see that. She also brings a, personality. She is obviously very intelligent and well spoken, and she can articulate her thoughts and views very succinctly. And so, I think there were just so many storylines with her being in her last year, breaking the scoring record in the NCAA, kind of a purity about her and her team and trying to get back and win it all in her last year. So, a lot of unique kind of things there. And then, of course, the South Carolina team and their storyline. So I think just, again, perfect storm in terms of social media and the storylines that were out there and what people could get behind. But Caitlin certainly was a, kind of a lightning rod for what happened this season.
Astrid, what do you think, whether it's about Caitlin Clark, but I am curious about how much of the popularity of a sport is around the cult of celebrity?
Yeah, I think in a very small way, we're starting to see it with some of our players within the university program. We had Peyton Enns this year, a phenomenal striker out of Manitoba, who got 2 Can West Player of the Week awards, and that started to draw a lot of attention towards our program. It started to draw a lot of attention towards her. Can West nicknamed her Playoff Peyton after she had a hat trick in our playoff game versus U of A. And we started to see she was getting recognized. A few people, around campus started to, play off Peyton and shout towards her. But when we were at UBC playing, a lot of people started coming up to her, recognizing her, congratulating her on the hat trick. And in a very, very small way, we kind of felt that we had a celebrity within our program, and her social media posts were blowing up. She did a Takeover Tuesday, and we just had huge engagement. And we had lots of people who just wanted to learn more about her and her connection to the program and the success she was seeing on the field.
Lisa, how important are role models in getting young girls into sports, but staying in sports?
It's huge. Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was fortunate to have had female coaches all along the way, and I didn't really realize that until later that was a pretty unique situation, that not a whole lot of girls growing up have female coaches all the way through. A lot have only men. And so even in the coaching ranks, young girls being able to understand what female leadership looks like and sounds like and feels like compared to male leadership. I think there's so much of a, male leadership is the norm. And again, along the ways, a lot of male coaches and their coaching style, that was the epitome of elite coaching. And it has really taken a long time to figure out there are different ways of leading, different ways of coaching. And when there's female leadership, it can look quite a bit different. So yeah, as far as just being able to open up pathways for young girls to be able to see that, a career in sport is doable, it's viable, it's something to strive for, even if it's just continuing to stay involved in sport, continuing to participate. It's really, really important to have women involved and to be visible at all levels.
We'll be inviting another coach into the conversation in just a moment, but Astrid, first I'll let you weigh in there and the importance of women in leadership roles in sport.
It's the old saying, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think that's so true. And I think we're going to see so many more women and young girls going into leadership positions within the next 5 to 10 years in sport, in university sport, pro, semi-pro. And I think it's because we're establishing this really great generation of women that were brave and that took opportunities to come into leadership roles, and their own leadership philosophies are more aligned to transformational leadership, where we want to give opportunity. We want to grow the next generation of leaders. I think as women coaches and women that are involved in sport, we feel a sense of responsibility to how we're going to leave the program. And I think our legacy is going to be the amount of great women coaches that will replace us. And that's going to be a great time to sit back and have a beer and look at years and years of work that have really created a great culture for our next gen.
What are some of the hurdles that women coaches still face, Lisa?
Yeah, great question. Societal norms, I would say. I would say it's really tough depending on what level of coaching you're doing, really, really tough to do it if you have a family. I think there's still a lot of hurdles there, and it's definitely getting better. More supports that are becoming available to women just for childcare, for being able to do this job when you have kids. Yeah, I think, again, just a lot of norms to be broken, a lot of stereotypes to be dispelled. It's definitely not been seen as a women's world.
Astrid, what do you think?
Gosh, that's a really good question, and I feel that could be a whole nother episode as a lunchtime conversation. But I think if I just narrow in the focus is that one of the biggest hurdles, and I didn't see it till very late in my coaching career, but I had my first son at 41. And I think, when you talk about balancing a family and the structures and demands, and especially in season, it's incredibly difficult. I am incredibly fortunate and have so much gratitude for my support system around me. But I definitely delayed having a family. I definitely delayed because I saw it as a barrier. And I would love to have the opportunity to have conversations and help the next generation of female coaches see it through a different lens, because I didn't have female coaches growing up. I only had male coaches, and I didn't see their kids on the sidelines. And so I think it's important to not only just be a woman who's coaching, but also let my players understand that I'm also a mom, and my son Atlan often runs around with 32 amazing role models chasing him and playing tag. So it's just changing what society views as okay.
Mm-hmm. Today we're talking about the boom in women's sport, but not so much just the players, but the audience, the viewers that women's sport is getting right now. And we're hearing from a few interesting people. We've got coaches, and a little bit later this half hour, we'll be hearing from a broadcaster who's part of the all-female broadcast team for the Professional Women's Hockey League. We'd love to hear from you. What do you attribute all of this attention to right now on women's sport? You can call us 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Abby sent an email. She writes, "I've been so blown away by the boom and interest in women's sports. There was one moment this year that really highlighted it for me. My family was watching the World Cup, and there were women playing, women reffing, women commentating on panels, and then the commercials all featured women, even the Doritos commercial. I turned to my husband and commented, 'Wow, this is what your life is normally like?' It felt like an alternate universe in a way, but luckily it's real life, and I'm here for it." Abby, it's like when I was watching Saturday Night Live on the weekend, and the opening skit was all about the women's teams and the NCAA championships. So yes, making their mark in all sorts of ways. Doritos commercials, SNL skits, and of course on the ice, on the field, you name it. Now, Claire Doré is spending a month with the Saskatchewan Roughriders coaching staff. It's part of the CFL's Women in Football program. Claire Doré was the head coach and special teams coordinator with two teams, the Balfour Bears in the Regina Intercollegiate Football League and Regina Victorias. That's Regina Minor Football's all-female squad. We've got Claire on the line right now. Welcome to Blue Sky, Claire.
Hi, thanks for having me.
What exactly are you doing with the riders, with the coaching staff?
Well, just to clarify that, I had that experience a year ago.
Oh, it was a year ago.
So,
Okay.
yes. So they've actually just announced today the new participants, and so the riders will be having Maren Tunison with them this year. But last year I was up in Saskatoon for 3 weeks, and I participated as a coach on the field, working with the running backs under the previous coaching staff, and I got to go through rookie camp, through main camp, be involved in all the coaching meetings as they discussed who was coming in, who was going out, injury status. And that sort of culminated in their first preseason game that was hosted at Mosaic that I got to be on the sidelines for and experience sort of that full game experience last year.
So what was the intent and what continues to be the intent or the goal behind it? And I'm thinking of the goals that you were hoping to achieve personally, but also what the riders are hoping to accomplish with this.
Well, the Women in Football program is CFL-wide, so every team in the league has that experience. And I think, from my understanding, it is to open some of those doors and allow women to have experiences that previously have been really hard to come by. And so I had the opportunity to be on the field as a coach, but they have females coming in to the operations side as well, and other experiences like athletic therapy, training, and those sorts of things. And I think it is exactly to give women those opportunities that otherwise have been closed off. And speaking to coaches even in the room last year, they were quite candid to say the first place they look for other coaches to work with is from their own playing experiences or the teams they've been on. Well, you can do the math on that. There aren't women playing professionally or at the NCAA level in the States. So their first look is to other men. And so often these women that have been working hard now, in particular in tackle football for as many as 15 years to gather experience playing, coaching, sort of feel like that door was never going to be opened for them. So this program has come along, and it's going to be in its third year now in terms of creating those opportunities.
So how do you think it changed the dynamic with you being there and part of the team in that way? I think we often hear about the more diversity we have, the more people at the table, the better things are for workplaces, et cetera. And so how did you influence things with the riders, do you think?
Well, I hope my influence was for the conversation in the room to have to change, right? In how we speak, right? We can't just use you guys anymore, because I'm not a you guy. And so that bringing that awareness that there was a woman in the room in their bullpen, and that they had to be aware of that. Also, right, to have them ask me questions about football or strategies or schemes, and for them to be hearing a woman give them answers at a highly technical level, again, hopefully changes the perspective of other coaches about how women can contribute. And as I believe Lisa was talking about, having a female coach, whether it's for men or women, often women approach coaching from a different perspective and a different attitude. So what I brought onto the field was maybe a different energy than those male coaches that sometimes athletes respond better to.
What did you take from that experience that you continue to use in your coaching now?
Well, I learned a lot about how professional leagues use their practices with massive efficiency and sort of those processes, and it's something I'm now taking forward and trying to incorporate in my practices. Obviously, any number of drills and schemes that I was able to absorb while I was there, I'm carrying them through and adapting them to suit the needs of the teams that I'm actively coaching with. And I like talking about the experience so that people are aware that there are women finding pathways into professional sport. Whether that's ultimately where I'm going to end up, I'm not sure, but certainly seeing now that the number of women coaching in the NFL has, quadrupled and multiplied year by year. There's a positional coach coaching in BC that is a woman. We're starting to see more and more women now breaking through that barrier. And so just having that awareness, because a lot of people just don't know that women's tackle football is really where it is. Again, you heard from Astrid and Lisa about how far those sports have come. Well, tackle football, we're coming. We're just a few years behind.
Yeah. But do you think your sport will capitalize on this moment that we're having? And we're really focused today on just the number of viewers that women's sports are getting. But do you think that will benefit all sports?
Absolutely, I think so. Seeing the mass explosion of soccer, women's hockey, women's basketball over these past couple of years, and of course, I know the main focus here has been over the most recent sort of NCAA March Madness experiences with some of those stars. But I think that's again, when networks are starting to see the viewership that's available when they're putting women's sports on the television, they might come knocking on the door of the WWCFL before too long. And when you come and see the type of athleticism that you see in a WWCFL tackle football game, I think, people will take notice of us.
And then, like you said, there's another cohort this year working with the riders. And so hopefully it creates more space for women doing these jobs. Claire, good to talk to you today. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
That's Claire Doré, who spent a month with the Saskatchewan Roughriders coaching staff. Today we are talking about the explosion and interest in women's sports. And so you can call us with your stories, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Let's quickly go to a caller who joins us right now in Regina. Robin is there. Hello to you, Robin.
Oh, good afternoon, Lisa. What I want to bring to people's attention is women's rugby. This is a sport regularly not mentioned, as indeed your previous speaker did not. Why would she? But the point is that I believe the Canadian Senior 15 rugby team is hosting an international competition in Canada. It's in 3 legs, and I believe there are 6 nations in each leg. I believe it begins on the 27th of April, but I don't know the details. But the other point I want to raise, which is more immediate, is the remarkable women's 6 Nations rugby also in Europe. It's fought between the UK, that is to say Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England, and so on, and also France and Italy. And that happens to be this weekend. So if anybody wants to see some exceptional open rugby, they should certainly try to watch these matches.
Love that. Robin, thanks for calling.
Can I perhaps name a channel other than yours where this may be seen, at least the 6 nations in Europe?
Sure. Go for
weekend?
it. Yeah.
It's the DAZN channel, DAZN channel, DAZN. It's one you have to purchase.
Yeah.
But if people are prepared to do that, they'll catch the games at 8:15 and 10:45 on Saturday, and 6:30 in the morning on Sunday.
An early morning one.
That's a sport which I think is unrecognized. My wife had a student, she's a vocal teacher, but she had a vocal teaching a student who 15 years ago at least was playing women's rugby in Saskatchewan. So
nice.
I think it might be worth checking that out sometime.
Robin, thank you.
Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Take care, Robin. Thanks for calling. Lisa, I know you've got a jet right away here. You're both busy people, but I want to just bring up the issue of pay, because I think that's a really important part of the conversation, that despite this fact that we've seen this explosion in interest, there have been struggles when it comes to pay. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are, Lisa, on the fact, just why women's teams have had to fight for pay equity. I know that's a giant question, and the fight continues, but what are your thoughts on where we're at with that?
That crosses a lot of fields here. I think the biggest thing, I'll just look at the WNBA in comparison to the NBA. Those salaries really are driven by TV contracts, right? And just the number of games that are shown on mainstream cable television. And so the WNBA is getting there. I know they're going to be entering into a new collective bargaining agreement soon that will help. They've already raised salaries, rookie contracts. super max, the level that that's at. But yeah, we're a far cry off from where the NBA athletes are at. So again, until we get the huge TV deals, I think that's what drives so much of it. So again, I think along with everything else, it's just going to continue to grow. It's just taking some time, but the time is now. I think people are starting to get on board, and really, as women and supporters of female sport, we have to speak with our wallets, and we have to be prepared to step up and open our wallets.
Lisa, it's been great having you as part of the conversation today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
That's Lisa Tomaitis, head coach of the U of S Huskies, also served as coach of the Canadian women's basketball team and Germany's national team. Astrid Becker, head coach of the U of R women's soccer team, is staying with us. We're going to move to another sport for a moment because hockey, women's hockey, definitely having a moment. The Professional Women's Hockey League has seen a steady rise in viewers since it launched. Millions of people watching the inaugural game on New Year's Day. Brooke Hobson plays with the PWHL, the Prince Albert native skates with New York, and I spoke to her shortly after the league launched.
It's amazing. It's crazy to think, when I was just playing out there in Saskatchewan for fun when I was a little girl, I never really thought that this opportunity would arise for me personally, because there's always been the NHL and all the men's leagues. But now that, the women have a platform to reach for is really amazing. So I honestly wouldn't have expected this when I was a younger girl, but I'm super glad that, I'm here and I'm paving the way for all the young girls now that can strive to play in this league.
How has hockey changed for girls, do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely, when I was younger, I was always probably the only girl. I think there was a few more around when I was little. I was always playing on the boys' teams, and I think that, that was great. And I'm really fortunate that, the other parents, families, and the boys that I played with, they didn't really look at me differently for being a girl. It was more, we were all out there and we were just hockey players. So I'm grateful that I had that experience out there. And when I left after high school, went to Boston, I think that's when a really, really big shift happened in women's hockey, especially at home, because I felt like every time that I was coming home for the holidays that I'd come back and I'd realize there's more and more women's teams in Saskatchewan and in Prince Albert that, I never really had access to when I was young. So I realized that, there's so many girls actually getting into hockey at a young age now. It's a normal thing, which is great to see. And when there's more girls, it's just going to push everybody to be better and better. So I think it's growing significantly. And I think, this pro league is the next step to help even more people, be interested in hockey and want to shoot for a career in hockey.
Yeah. What do you see as the future for this sport for women and girls?
Yeah, I think, it's only going to get bigger and brighter for women's sports and women's hockey specifically. This league was a long time coming. I know there was a lot of work put into it. And, right now we have 6 teams, kind of just how the NHL started with their original 6. So that's where we're at right now. And I think, with the publicity that the league's getting and everything they're putting into it, it's just going to grow bigger and bigger. So I'm going to, expect to see more franchises come in the next few years and that sort of thing. And I think it's really going to put women's hockey even more on the map.
Prince Albert's Brooke Hobson plays for New York in the PWHL. Someone else who has a front row seat to the rise of this league is Daniela Ponticelli. Daniela was a reporter here at CBC Saskatchewan before she moved to Toronto to deliver play-by-play for the league. She is calling 2 games today, but we caught up with her earlier today between games.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Yeah, it's a treat to talk to you. What's it been like for you to have a front row seat to this league?
Oh my goodness. I couldn't have imagined a greater gift, and it's been so fun. Of course, kicked off January 1st, and Brooke Hobson was in that game. And that's always exciting for me, is when those Saskatchewan connections are there too. It's always a little bit fun, but overall, it's just been incredible, and it just keeps growing. You have the games at Scotiabank, and coming up soon, the Bell Center game as well. everything is looking so good, but it's the energy around the league, the fans, the players. So all I can say is I am beyond lucky to get a consistent seat to this fantastic league and the action it provides.
Okay, tell me more about how you've seen the interest build. You mentioned a few of the locations. Just how much has the interest built?
I keep thinking back to, so Mattamy Athletic Center in Toronto was sold out before the season even began. Of course, there's not as many seats inside Mattamy, about 3,000 or so. So we knew that it was going to be a really big deal from that point. But to step inside Scotiabank Arena, and that game, it wasn't one that I called, but I had to be there. I had to feel that energy. Chills. I still get chills to this day. 19,000 fans. And what's more is that it's not just women or women of a certain age. It's women of all ages. It's young boys. It's men. It's people who are just loving really great hockey. And that's the thing about this league, too, is that it's trying to innovate the game with things like the jailbreak goal, a shorthanded goal, where if you score on a penalty kill, you release your player from the penalty box. And so it's also adding in a fresh take on a game that everybody loves. Everybody's here to watch, and Canada has embraced this to a T. The attendance has been outstanding. We keep breaking records, obviously, in those big arenas, but even looking at Montreal, I've called so many games in Montreal. Place Bell is like a nightclub when there's a game, more than 10,000 fans steady in Place Bell, right? And the lights go down during the intermission. It really is a party. It doesn't matter if it's a 2 p.m. game or a 7 p.m. game. So that's what I mean by it's the energy, and it's something that, you know, I'm sure certain NHL games have that same feel, but to have it in a barn with all your friends celebrating something that's never been done before, a professional women's hockey league at this magnitude, it's still, I can't say enough. I know I've said it before. It gives you chills.
There's something totally going on here because you're saying all of this just as we witnessed incredible numbers for the NCAA women's final, right? So what do you think makes up for this moment that women's sports seems to be having?
It's been waiting. It's been waiting. It's been there. It's just needed the right time, place, energy, momentum, investment. We've got to talk about that too. People stepping up to the plate. The exposure of the PWHL is by far the reason as well, right? You've got the major networks involved. It's consistent coverage of the league. It's making sure that the league is being played in bars and airports. I still kind of have a moment where I go, oh yeah, I'm at a bar and I'm watching a PWHL game, right? It's having that consistent access. And it is the old adage of build it and they will come. But this is such a great example of that. And I do think that for so long, people have just been waiting to have the access to it and to be able to shut down the noise of nobody watches women's sports. And now the moniker and the idea is everyone is watching women's sports.
Yeah, watching it. And then now that brings in the dollars, right? Because the money is always a big part of this, isn't it?
And then you have to also look at, like, who are the people who are surprised by this and why is it so surprising? And I've loved as well the star male athletes who are weighing in and saying the athletes are so good. Let's stop that chatter of trying to compare them. The athletes in their own right are so spectacular. And when you get an even playing field where it's best on best, like the PWHL, you get to see that on full display.
What about the sportscasting aspect of it? Because you're part of an all-female broadcast team. So just how significant is that?
It's very significant. And I think it also speaks to the fact that now hopefully younger women or just women who have maybe always wanted to step into that sportscasting world can see pathways for themselves, because that is a big thing, is that we haven't had sort of the development systems that have been open to others. And I think that the more we see it, the more we can open that door and remind people that all voices belong in the broadcast booth. And it's just been tremendous. I selfishly just love being around other women and working with other women in the booth, right? But that being said, I've been so fortunate for my time in Saskatchewan to really get my reps in. And that's what it takes. It takes reps and practice and building. And having so many men being there to guide me. And my mentors in this are male. And I think that speaks to as well the openness that everyone has to bringing more people in. And that's another reason why, in my opinion, the PWHL is so great, is that inclusivity piece and just constantly making sure that we are bringing more people in, because the league, well, it's looking to grow, right?
Yeah, and that's something that Brooke Hobson said. She feels like this is just the beginning, right? And it is just the beginning in many ways. And so what are you hoping for next? What's the pathway that you see not only for yourself, but for the league and perhaps, overall for all women in all sports?
What a question. First of all, for me, I just hope I get to keep doing this, because it is a pinch me moment every time I get to step in a booth. I never, ever take it for granted that this is an opportunity. I had set a goal personally for myself 5 years ago that in a dream world, I'd love to be a full-time play-by-play announcer. And right now that is what I'm living. And it's just incredible. And this literally would not have happened without the PWHL, or at least in the timeline that it has. So that's just my own personal experience. What I'm looking forward to is how this is going to trickle down. So we're talking about hockey academies, hockey schools, hockey programs in Saskatchewan, elsewhere in Western Canada, starting to bolster and grow and getting even stronger. There's already such great programs out there. Of course, very strong programs out in the eastern provinces as well. Quebec has just got such a great, strong foundation. So now it's just going to be how big and how monumental is the growth going to be at those levels, and how can athletes set themselves apart? Is the only pathway NCAA, or how can U Sports cut through, right? That's what I'm honestly so excited for, is how this is going to elevate everything beneath in order to make the best even better.
Okay, well, you have a pretty emotional reaction when you're watching a game, and I'm getting goosebumps as I talk to you, Daniela. Congrats on living the dream. So good to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That is Daniela Ponticelli. She does play-by-play for the PWHL. You can watch the Canadian PWHL games streamed live on the CBC Sports website most Saturdays. The next game is Toronto at Montreal on Saturday, April 20th. I think all of our guests today use the word pathway, right? Creating a pathway so that girls and women can see a path forward to excel at a particular sport, or to be a coach, or to be a broadcaster like Daniela. Astrid, as you listen to Daniela there and you're thinking about the girls and women that you work with, what are you seeing in terms of young girls? Are they seeing more of a pathway these days? Is there a lot of interest in soccer by young girls?
Yeah, absolutely. My roster is very full at the university, and I think what we're seeing for our first time at the university is a shift that, it's harder and harder for local players to walk on or to get onto our roster, because we have this interest in Western Canada, and we have this, players from BC, players that are coming, and it just shows more and more players want to see U Sports as part of their pathway. If we see And when we see Project 8, the Pro League come, I hope, and it's my hope, that it's very similar to CPL on the men's side, that there's U Sport draft. And we're going to see some of our current players U Sports draft eligible for that Pro League. And when I tell them that in our one-on-one meetings, they look surprised. Some of them have teared up that, I think they can go to the next level. And those pathways are just going to get clearer and clearer. And it's such an exciting time. Like, I'm ready. Let's go to Montreal. Let's watch a hockey game. I got to get there. Like, that energy, I've got it marked. I'm going to watch rugby this weekend. Just, it's not just soccer. Let's get out there and just, enthusiastically support all the women's sport.
Yeah. And not just girls supporting women's sport or finding their own pathway through this, but I just think about all the little boys watching. And we kicked off the show by talking about how young boys were asking NCAA women's players for autographs. So that's just as much a part of it, right? For young boys to see women as role models, right? That's part of it too, isn't it?
That's a huge part of it. My 3-year-old, I'm so fortunate. 32 role models every time he comes to the turf field. How lucky is he?
Yeah, no kidding. Astrid, this has been just wonderful to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
That is Astrid Becker, head coach of the U of R's women's soccer team. We had Lisa Tomaitis with us today, head coach of the U of S Huskies, also served as coach of the Canadian women's basketball team and Germany's national team. We heard from Daniela Ponticelli, who's doing play-by-play for the PWHL. And of course, Claire Dore was one of our guests today too. She spent a month with the Saskatchewan Roughriders coaching staff. So really interesting to hear her perspective. If you didn't catch all of Blue Sky and you're wanting to hear that conversation with Claire Dore or one of the other folks that we had on the show today, we do always post our episodes on CBC Listen after the fact, so you can listen on demand. Of course, you can stream us on CBC Listen, but then look for shows as well on demand. You can call our talkback number if you didn't connect with us today and you still have something to say, 1-800-661-7540, or you can always email us, bluesky@cbc.ca.